My dearest David, there isn't a day that passes when I don't think of you. Mum and I talk about you every day. We share your stories, we laugh, we cry, and we reminisce. You were my brother, my best friend, my protector, and my biggest supporter through so many of life's difficult moments. If love alone could have kept you here, you would still be right by my side. Keep watching over me, won't you? I hope wherever you are, you find peace. I feel you with me every day. Somewhere, somehow, we'll meet again. And I love you so much. Every year now, I think, on his birthday, I'm going to write something to him because maybe he's listening. We were two completely different children. And that soft person, that kind soul, suddenly had to put on this exterior and be this super strong person. He was a protector of other people. He was kind, caring, giving, and was always there for me growing up. But he certainly made me stick to my dancing. And he'd shout, "You're going to be something one day. You're going to be something somebody we're proud of." These were the times of the year that he was really struggling in that dark, dark place. She said, "I'm not comfortable leaving him." And I said, "He'll be fine for one day, Mum. He'll be fine." He's assured me he'll be fine. Not realizing he was in a lower place than possible. 12 o'clock that night, I tried to get hold of David. I couldn't get hold of him. There was a knock on the door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I opened the front door, and I think I just must have face went white. What kind of strength do you have to take your own life? That's not an easy thing. I was angry because he left my mother without any explanation.
Have you ever got to a place where you have thought of suicide in your mind?
I have. Yeah, I was lonely. I was on my own. I didn't know what was happening in my life. I wasn't in exactly the place that he was in, but I've been down those lonely, dark roads, you know. I don't think I ever go outside the door without thinking, how will I protect myself? Because a stalker won't just stop with you. He thought we were responsible for my brother's death. It was our responsibility, and he is dead because of us. You made my dad's life miserable. I'm going to make your life miserable. This is a person I've never met. My mother's never met. I would say it was probably the most painful time.
It's my belief that too many societal problems persist because we keep relying on the same ways of thinking. Question the Default exists to challenge the norms that shape our society, dismantling the status quo and exploring better alternatives for how we live and manage our health and well-being. Question the Default is for those who are driven to create a better future. If this mission resonates with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or sharing. Every single small action helps us on our mission. Thank you. I'm incredibly excited to introduce today's guest, Shirley Ballas. Shirley is someone I've admired for a long, long time, not just for her professional success and her energy on Strictly Come Dancing, but for the way that she's used her platform to speak openly about loss, grief, and mental health. After losing her brother, David, to suicide in 2003, Shirley made it her mission to raise awareness around men's mental health and suicide prevention. She's also a fellow ambassador and supporter of CALM, the campaign against living miserably, and Suicide & Co. Over the years, she's taken on incredible challenges to raise funds and spark conversations that can truly save lives. What I find so powerful about Shirley is how she's turned something deeply painful into purpose, using her voice to help others find hope and connection. To have someone like Shirley supporting this conversation is so, so important, and I can't wait for you to hear the incredibly powerful conversation that we have. Shirley, thank you so much for being on. How are you today?
I'm fair and partly cloudy today. It's always tough to do sort of podcasts, anything around suicide. So, but I'm good, and I'm here with you, and I'm excited to be here to share.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. It means a huge amount, which we will never be able to capture in words, the effort and kind of the impact that you've had around suicide prevention over the years. But a huge thank you. I would like just kind of to start with just you taking you back to your childhood, and in particular, if we were back in 1970 now, and we were to open the front door of the Liso housing estate that you were based in, what would we see?
You'd see a red telephone on the left side, the ones that used to dial and come back. You'd see a multicoloured rug, and you'd probably see David and I running all over the place, and him telling me off, getting me ready for practice or getting me ready to go to dance and reminding me where my life was supposed to go. And my mum was always busy at that age, so my brother was my general caretaker.
Your general caretaker. That's
Yeah.
such a nice way of framing it. So those early years, and what was the kind of the age difference between yourself and David?
18 months. He was
18
older than me, 18 months. But he seemed a lot older at the time, Only now when I look back, I realise just how close in age we were. But as a child, he seemed so much older, almost took on the role of father, a friend, keeping the house sort of organised while my mother was out and making sure I got where I needed to go.
Amazing. And your family dynamic at that point, so it was your mum,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Who else was around you at that point?
Well, in our family, just my mum, my brother and myself, we lived on a housing estate in Liso. Everybody on there didn't have much. Times could be difficult, whether it was bullying or, having to go for school dinners that my brother just loathed because the kids used to make fun of both of us, but I handled it better than him. And it was just, I remember some of the parts of having a sense of freedom though, because we could always go out and play on the streets, with friends around the housing estate. It was kind of a close, tight-knit community is where we belonged at that time.
Do you ever have those kind of like nostalgic moments? When you
Deja vu moments.
Deja vu nostalgia
Yeah,
moments,
if I see somebody playing ollies or marbles, it takes me back because that was the main game back then when we were younger, right out on the green at the front of the flats. And we'd all be playing with these ollies and marbles, or the ice cream man when he used to bring the dandelion and burdock once a week. So when I hear that ice cream van going with its little siren, I go back to that time when I was, 8, 9, 10.
It's very powerful. And you described yourself, when I was doing my research, as a young girl who was always hyper-vigilant. And I love the way that you captured this. I would love to just kind of dig deeper about what that meant for you when you've said that
Hyper-vigilant meant for me that from a very young age, I was having to find my way to the dance class on my own. Like I say, my mum had to work, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do the things we did. But I'd have to walk the 1.5 miles to the dance studio on my own from 7, 8, 9. And then by 10, I'd already moved to a studio in Liverpool. That meant me getting a train. And then it meant me getting a bus and then another bus. So I'd get there by, 6 o'clock in the evening on a Friday. And at Friday night, I had to come back the same way. It was a 2-hour journey for such a young person. So I'd run through from Liverpool Central, the Ribble bus station to Liverpool Central. I'd have to really leg it. And I was always aware of who was behind me. And sometimes there were strangers lurking, or I was aware people were watching, or a certain man at one point we were watching. So I think it just heightened my senses to be super vigilant going out alone. Of course, my mother was, don't talk to anybody, don't talk to strangers, don't sit with strangers. If you're uncomfortable, get off the bus, get off the train, or find a safe place. So I think all in all, it made me hyper-vigilant to my safety from a young age.
And that's still with you today?
Still with me today, yeah. I don't go anywhere at night on my own. I'm very careful, particularly as I have had a stalker. So now I'm even more cautious and careful about where I go, when I go, and who I go with.
You always have to second guess and...
Always second guessing what might happen. Of course, you never really know what's going to happen. But I think in this day and age and the society that we live in, I think your safety is more heightened, by all the things we see on the TV. And particularly being on Strictly, with so much trolling and so much that goes on. And the kind of messages that I get, some of them not flattering at all. And it just makes you just cautious and vigilant of your safety.
It's quite interesting. And thank you for sharing that kind of real world hypervigilance that you need, but then also this digital hypervigilance that you also need. It kind of doesn't really stop for you.
Not at all. I just feel 24/7. Even if I'm driving, first thing I do is make sure the car doors are locked. If I stop and somebody starts knocking on my window, I'm the first one from the light, so, and not because I don't want to stop and chat, or if it's a homeless person, give them something. But today you just don't know. So it's better to be cautious, I think.
And does that amplify? Obviously, we're at the time of recording in Strictly Mania season. Does it heighten at that period?
I feel it's heightened all year round, really, particularly with the Strictly is 6 months of the year, because we have this and then we have the tour and, the rehearsal. So you could say about 6 months of my life is immersed in Strictly Come Dancing. And then I have a full-time job myself. I work 6 days a week, teaching, lecturing, traveling, getting couples to the top of the tree, if you like. So I'm just always cautious who's outside the studio. We might be off peak from Strictly, but, still people send you messages year round. And if you're being stalked, that's 52 weeks of the year, Saturdays, Sundays and holidays. So just all the time. I don't think I ever go outside the door without thinking, how will I protect myself? And my mother, 88, she lives with me, and sometimes I think she thinks I'm still 10 because she gives me all the rules and regulations and remember this and what if this happens or that happens. She bought me a whistle. I now have to go out with a whistle around my neck if I take the dog to the park. She said, it could be something happens. I just need you to blow the whistle. And sometimes I think it's for her peace of mind as well, the safety aspect.
That's really powerful. And I know that we're going to talk about your mum in a moment and how important your mum is to you and always has been. I'm really intrigued, if you don't mind sharing, the whistle for your own safety. Is this something that you've, as a result of the stalking incident, you've now had to
Yes, I would say it's more from the stalking and the fact it was a suspended sentence. So she thinks about different things that she wants me to carry in my bag. Of course, you can't carry knives and forks and things like that as me. Oh, maybe you should take this and maybe you should take that. So she decided on the whistle, and then she gives me the whistle when I'm going out. I could be all dollied up and have a whistle around my neck. It's quite bizarre.
It's such a hidden nature of stalking that people can never really relate to. I sadly have been a victim of stalking in my family, and what I found hard to explain to people was the number of things it impacts and the number of people around you that it impacts.
It impacts your whole family, all your friends, because a stalker won't just stop with you. They want to get to your friends and hopefully befriend your friend on Facebook or the social media, hoping to get a reach out so that they can talk to them. Everybody that encircles our life was impacted by this stalking we had.
And how do you feel now? Do you feel...
Well, it was 7 years or 8 years that we were stalked from the very beginning of getting on the TV. And of course, it was a young man who seems to think he was related and the son of my brother. But he was in his 30s. I'd never heard of him. My mother had never heard of him. My brother's not here to sort of talk to us. None of his friends knew this particular chap. And I've had people in the past who think they've been married to me or were from a former life or something. So when you put it all together, it's difficult to know what to believe and not to believe. Like in the United States, I had an incident where this whole family, they had this cancer and could we donate because my son was on Dancing with the Stars and we were answering it and sending money and this, and it turned out to be an absolute complete hoax. It just wasn't true at all. It went on for months and months and months, until they deleted their whole page. So this isn't the first time that this has happened. Hopefully it will be the last, I'm hoping. But he had a suspended sentence. I hope he gets his life in order. I never wanted him to serve time in jail or prison. I'm not that kind of person. I'm a very forgiving person. But those messages were deep and they were extremely painful. He thought we were responsible for my brother's death. And I'll remind you, and he did every single day for 7 years. He was reminding us all about what we were not trying to forget, but trying to put sort of like in a corner or on a shelf, pick it up when we needed to pick it up, not when somebody was reminding us day in and day out that it was our responsibility and he is dead because of us. So it wasn't just a stalking, it was the words that were used. You made my dad's life miserable, I'm going to make your life miserable. This is a person I've never met, my mother's never met, my brother's friends don't even know who he is. So I would say it was probably the most painful time. And I have coping mechanisms. I'm pretty good at coping mechanisms. But, I've got my niece to think about. He'd been contacting her, me 2017, Mary 2014, but she never mentioned it. So it's only when I mentioned it, she said, I was getting messages from that fella. And then, of course, when he actually met my mother and followed her around a supermarket, little old lady, jumped out in front of her, nearly almost gave her a heart attack. And that's the reason why I moved my mother from the north to the south, because I'm not there and she only has me. So it was a safety aspect there as well. So it changed our lives completely. She could no longer be up north with her friend. she lives with me. She had to come down with me. I had to warn everybody. He was going to turn up at functions that I did and book signings. I'll be there. So it made me nervous about, well, who is he? What does he look like? So my driver, George, would always stand outside looking for anybody suspicious. And it just wasn't a fun time at all.
And I found it's very hard to, and thank you so much for sharing that before I do comment back. I found it so hard to explain to people how I felt and how it never, ever calmed the feelings of fear. And of course, we never actually planned to talk about this today, but I knew we were going a million and one tangents as we went through. But I lived a life always second guessing, I guess, what this gentleman would do to impact my mum. And I had to change, I would say, pretty much everything around how I lived, how I communicated, what I shared, what I didn't share, where I went, and most definitely fearful of my mum's life. And the relentlessness I had to show, I would say, to communicate and get with the police and the criminal justice system to get any form of support was something that I never want anyone to experience.
Awful.
And the easiest way I can describe it to anyone is that it was, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, it was harder than losing my dad to suicide. And I mean that purely because of the relentlessness that it never went, and I never thought it would ever go. And when I started to hear more people share these stories, not only incredibly famous people, but the everyday person, I feel like there's a big thing in society here that we're not talking about, nor are we getting to a form of the right support for people impacted.
Well, I watch programs where people are stalked online, like you say, just normal people going about their business and they get stalked. And I think it's more serious than people care to think about, to be honest. Like you say, it's that relentlessness. They're not giving up. They can send messages in the middle of the night or in the morning and constantly reminding. And somehow they shift the blame onto you because you don't seem to know who this person is who's in their 30s. But surely his mother should have stepped up earlier and sorted things out if she felt, he was part of our family or my brother's son or whatever. And she didn't. Obviously, she told him when I was on TV. So you see, you put the TV part in 2017, first messages are coming in 2017. So it doesn't tally. He's already in his 30s. Why didn't somebody contact earlier or, were honest with us, or his mother honest with him? So I'm sure he also struggled. Somebody suddenly looks at TV and says, oh, that's your auntie, or this is what happened in your earlier life. It just doesn't work. Doesn't work like that. So my main thing now, since David's gone, who was the protector of the family, is to protect the sanity of my mother. Me, I can cope with almost pretty much anything you throw at me. But a fragile 88-year-old woman who's in remission from cancer cannot. So it's important for me that I protect her.
And you always have done, which is exactly the question I was going to get onto. And how can you begin to explain the impact that your mum has had on your life?
I don't think I'd have enough words in any podcast to say what she's meant to me. First of all, she's been there from the beginning. She gave me a chance at dance that when we sat down and talked about it as a young girl of 7, she said, I don't really think we have the finances for you to embark. My mother was always a person, if you embarked on it, you had to follow through with it. So she was nervous about putting me in something she didn't really know what it was going to cost. But she did, and she put herself thoroughly immersed in it. Then, of course, I had to take 2 or 3 jobs and babysitting and making sales and working in Cadbury's and here and there. She was always trying to earn a few bob, and it was a few bob back in the day, and to keep me going. So there was that, and then the support when I wanted to leave at 14, and then the support when I wanted to leave my first husband. And my life has always been full of drama and a little bit of a mess, always here or there or making choices. And she always would give me what she thought was the right thing to do. I didn't always follow that advice, and I'm sorry that I didn't now. But I don't think for me, my life's anything without her. She is the nucleus of which I surround my world on. Everything I do it for her to say, well done, or I'm always looking for something from her that makes me feel good, because she's the only real person in my life that's genuine. I can honestly say that.
So powerful, so incredibly powerful. And I did find through my research that your mum worked at Cadbury's. So I tried to dig as deep as I can to find a collector that had something roughly from the era. roughly from the era. And although you probably couldn't eat the chocolate that was inside once, but that is, real vintage Cadbury's, what should be from the 60s and 70s.
Wow.
With a kind of a small note in there, maybe for after. And before I did any of this work, I actually used to work at Mars, so enemy number one
did
for
you?
Cadbury's.
Enemy number one.
But, so I can definitely relate to that kind of environment and the importance, especially for the Mars business, a family-owned business, of people that have worked there for a considerable amount of time, and how their heart and soul was into these workplaces. And I kind of could feel that as you explained.
Well, I remember when she was working at Cadbury's, I was only a young girl. And she would say that she was on a belt with 15 other women making the cakes, that go along the little conveyor and you put the treats on top. And she said she was always nervous about going to the bathroom, because when you went to the bathroom, they'd all be gabbing and gossiping as she got up to go to the loo. So she told me gossiping and gabbing will go on throughout your life, Shirley, well into being an older lady. And I think I learned a lot from her about what to take on board, what is somebody else's issue and not mine. Although today in social media, it's always hard not to take things personally, but you've always got to think about where that person in social media is at their point in their life. So she's taught me kindness is key, and also to shut off. I always give people 3 chances on social media. If they continue to be bullying, then I block them. But I wouldn't like to think that they're going through any things that I've been through in my life.
And how is your mum today? You mentioned the physical illness.
Oh, well, she's in remission. She's still smoking, and they've asked her to give it up. She has COPD, but she said, don't take the one thing off me towards the end of my life that I enjoy. So I don't. She's 88. She runs her life the way she wants to run her life. She still gets up in the morning, this morning, shouting, have you thrown your washing down? She's washing and ironing's done back in your room by 11 o'clock. She was changing her bed. Can you help me with the duvet cover? She's a full on. I opened the cupboards this morning. Everything was all in line. She'd already done that. My mum's an active 88-year-old. I come in, sometimes she stood on a stool cleaning ornaments way above her little 5-foot height. And that makes me nervous in case she falls. But she's a woman unto herself and she won't be bossed about. No. She is at the helm of the house for sure.
That's incredible. I'm envisaging that. But
you're close to your mum too, right?
Very much so.
You protect your mum, since you lost your dad. I grew up without a dad and then lost David. So we tend to be a bit more clingy, I think, My son has only endured the loss of his uncle, but I'm very close with him. He calls every day. Do you call your mum every day?
I don't.
My son calls me most days.
I should.
Just even to just say, hi, I'm busy, but just checking in, you're okay.
Yeah, I should. You know what? I was very, very good for a long period of time. I think having my own children did impact it. Not that's an excuse whatsoever, but I think, it can be, you do find excuses in life, and I shouldn't find excuses for the things that matter.
Because I can just say as a mother that one 30-second call makes my day for the whole day. Or the little message that just is sent, just checking in, mum, or a little picture from Banksy, which is my 2-year-old grandson. Just anything from him, because we're a close-knit family, means more to me than the child will ever realise.
So moving away, I think you're maybe 14, 15 years old.
14, yeah.
That must have been difficult when you live with your mum and for such a long period of time.
Well, I remember sitting in the house. We had a house at the time, 43 Cameron Road. We lived there for a while, and I remember telling her that the only way it could work is if I moved in with them, because the travelling to Liverpool was difficult. It was 10 times more difficult travelling to Shipley in Yorkshire as a young 12, 13, 14-year-old. She agreed because she thought I'd be back within 6 weeks,
right?
And I wasn't. And I lived with the family, and they had other children, a girl the same height as me, plus Nigel, who went on to be my fiancé at 16, and the brother and the mum and the dad in a smaller house than we had. I would say it was pretty difficult. It was a strong wake-up call. It wasn't like my mother, it was his mum was very stern. I'm grateful that she let me stay with her and live there for a short while, but I knew I couldn't continue living there, and I made the decision to move to the bright lights of London as I saw it. And my mother just thought, I've got a daughter that's got a bit of a Looney Tune going on in her head. But she agreed to let me go, and I said to Nigel, you can come with me. We can explore dance together. We're engaged to be married. We can see what it's like. We can get a little flat. We'll struggle, but let's try. And fortunately, he decided he'd like to go as well. So we moved to London by 16 in a renter flat full of rats in Norbury in London. I'll never forget it. But for me, it was a start, and it was my rat infested flat, but it was mine. You know what I mean? Just a bedroom and a bathroom. That was what it was.
Yeah. Do you ever look back at that period of time? What was going through your mind?
What was going through my mind at the time was the flat that I had was opposite a studio called Top of the Stairs.
Okay.
It was one of the biggest studios in London. I'd never been in there. I couldn't afford to go in there. But my window was opposite that window. And of course, it was night fever, and they're all queuing up to go in the ballroom. And I'd sit on a cushion because I didn't want those yucks, whatever they're crawling about under the wallpaper and roaches and rats or whatever. And I'd watch that and I'd think, one day, I'm going to go into that studio. And I did eventually, got to be in that studio.
Amazing. Because I think today, and I hope this is a fair assumption, is that you come across incredibly determined. You know what you want, you know what you like. But I sense even at that age, you had this positive self-talk.
My mother said from a young age, if I wanted to do tennis, I would whine and bug. And when I had a birthday party once, she didn't pick me as the winner. She picked my friend who was singing as the winner, and it was a big tantrum. And my mother said I want.
Really? Was
help
it
me. How do I achieve? And I think that I've just always been a determined child. I hate for people to say, you can't do this, you won't do this, you'll never amount to anything. Those kind of words drive me forward.
This episode is brought to you in support of CALM, the campaign against living miserably. CALM is a leading UK suicide prevention charity on a mission to help people end their misery, not their lives. We both do things differently. We both know we need to change the conversation around suicide, and that's why together we're both creating space to question the defaults that shape the way we think, feel, and talk about suicide and mental health. We're opening up conversations that remind people, whatever you are facing, you're not alone. CALM has loads of tools and resources available to anyone online to help you find the support that you need, including a life-saving helpline for people open every day from 5 p.m. to midnight, as well as vital online resources for anyone who needs them. So if you or someone you know needs to talk, please visit thecalmzone.net. Thank you for being part of this. And of course, today we may touch on conversations about suicide in this episode. Together, we can question the defaults that keep people silent, smash the stigma around suicide, and help build a world where no one has to face this alone. Thank you. You describe yourself as always running. And I read that when I learned that through my research as positive and negative, running always away perhaps from some things that you've encountered in your life, but also running for something better, something that's right for you. Is that fair? Running
for something's better, maybe in a small amount, but I think always running a little bit from the past. So if I have downtime, I'm always nervous when I look in my diary and I think, oh my Lord, I've got a few days off here, because then my videotapes go in my head on repeat and it tends to go back into the negative rather than forward into the future. And self-sabotage a bit in my head. So I've had some counselling on that, on how to deal with that and compartmentalise. That's helped me a little bit to move things over into different spaces. Like right now we're coming up to November, Christmas, and this was the time when my brother wasn't well. So I really have those boxes start opening now and those memories start coming back. And then come January, I'm able to put them on a shelf for a little while. So yes, I think my life is a bit all over the place, even now still. I can't seem to find the right path, the straight path. So working is a place of sanctuary. I know that will sound strange to many people. Work is my sanctuary. I go in and I'm teaching and dance, something I love, something I know in my sleep that needs no rehearsal, no study, because I've already done all that. And I can get lost in a full day of work. And those for me are peaceful times. And then coming home, I've always got to sort of stay busy. You know, I'm having a week off soon. And I said to him, because we were going to go and see my grandson for his birthday, but now it's kind of fell through and I'll be home for a week. So I said to my mother, you know, what we're going to do for a week. Don't worry. We'll do all the closets, all the drawers. We'll do them again. We'll send things to the charity shops. And so she's already got a plan for us. But keeping busy is key for me. I couldn't retire. I couldn't. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I would torture myself, I think. So it's better I keep busy.
You've always had purposeful work.
Purposeful work. I mean, look at my mother. I was working from 11, just like I'd go and wash dishes where my mother worked in the pub or, you know, ask people, what would you like? I'd be the waitress asking everybody what they want, you know, and collecting tips and things like that. So I've always worked, whether it's washing hair in a hairdresser or waiting tables. I've never, ever been without a job. Ever in my entire life, no matter how small the job was. But I always felt like I needed to contribute because the shoes were expensive, the little dresses were expensive. And when I left home and got my first job at 16, my mum said, this is too difficult for me to support you. She worked in Cadbury's. I can give you boxes of food that she would get on a Friday or what have you. And I can help you a little bit with your rent, but from there, you're on your own. Best learning lesson she ever gave me, because I learned to budget. I earned £16 a week working in a solicitor's office as a gopher, basically, £16 a week. So by the time you took out room and board and your dance lesson and your food and things like that, it was on a very, very tight budget back then. But I'm still like that today. I've never changed. It doesn't matter. I've had times when I've been well off. I've had times when I've been super poor. But it doesn't matter what you give me. I will budget what I have and I will live within my means.
Have you ever made the connection, and I'm sure you have, that every job you've had has always been moving? Obviously dancing is very obvious, but even before that is the same thing. You're always moving. You're always seeing a reward from the movement.
All the time. Even when I was working with the solicitors, they saw something in me. They thought, you need day release. We're going to let you do pitment, shorthand and typing. Right. They sent me to that, so I was up and going to a college twice a week and dancing and waitressing and washing hair and running errands. And my life is always running, always running. I'm
Amazing.
Definitely, even at 65, not in the slow lane yet. I should be, and I'm trying, but somehow it doesn't work.
And you've got a great role model in your mum to watch every day.
She's every day. She's still doing her washing and ironing and cooking and cleaning and whatever else she wants to do. She never sits still.
Amazing.
Except when Coronation Street's on and then the world stands still.
I see. And do you mind, if you feel comfortable, you talked about therapy and this kind of decompartmentalizing some of the things that do come into your mind. Would you mind sharing what that feels like and how you found therapy?
Well, first of all, I tried to talk to some friends, and what I realized in my industry is no matter the minute something leaves your mouth, it no longer belongs to you because you've shared it with somebody else that you trust, and often they would share it on and everybody would know my business. I couldn't talk about my brother to my mother in the early days because she just, a bit like yourself, she blocked it out for years and it just was not a subject to be talked about. So going to counselling and sitting there with a counsellor was my real feeling that I could really share what was going on inside me. And I think in some ways it probably saved me from dark places that I used to find myself going into, again, that I couldn't talk about or share with anyone, only the counsellor. And I think if it hadn't been for him, I would have gone into places that were not nice. So counselling for me, I would probably say, saved my life in some ways. It gave me tools to handle different situations. And I fast understood that it's very difficult to trust anybody. Once you type that message, once you share something, once you say something, it no longer belongs to you. It's going to get shared somewhere along the line in your life.
Do you mind sharing what some of the tools are you use?
Well, the tools for me is I have always got to find that 10 minutes of time for myself, which I'm a Christian, so it's often praying and having that time for myself. Yoga and finding, even if it's 1 hour, for myself so I can clear my mind and switch off my phone. Alone time took me 20 years of counselling to try to find. I think I was very codependent, always felt like I needed somebody in my life. So it took 20 years to get that tool in place that I'm actually okay on my own. And once you're okay on your own, lots of other little dark clouds lift. And I think I'm in that place at 65. Like I say, it's taken many years to get into that place. And tools when I feel attacked, that understanding that it's their issue and not mine in most cases. Also, if I've done something wrong, to own up and sort of say, you know what, Harry, I did say that and I'm sorry I said that and I had no business saying that. Not to hide it, to be really transparent and being open and honest if you've made a mistake. And hopefully people around you will then realize, oh, well, it's okay to fess up. So I've got many tools along the way. One, for being transparent with myself and my own mistakes. And two, realizing that it can often be somebody else's issue and not mine, and how to deal with that. Taking time for myself. And the biggest one of all is okay to be on your own, which again, if my mother were to leave the planet, I don't know how I would cope, because she's lived with me off and on. She lived with me from when my son was 2 till he was 21, and then on and off with my brother. So she's either lived with me or she's lived with my brother. So I couldn't imagine what it's going to be like, but I'm trying. And she also talks about when that time comes. See, my mother talks about that. When this time comes, you're going to have to be strong here, here, and here. And I found myself at one point not wanting to talk about it, and she makes me sit down, all arranged and organized, what music she wants, what a funeral will be like, what she doesn't want, what she wants. And it's difficult to talk about those things, but she is making me talk about those things. I try to talk to my son about that now with myself, because tomorrow's promised to no one and you never know. You're morbid, Mum. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. But we have to have conversations about that loss and what happens, and how you'll cope. How will you cope? How do you cope? Life is coping mechanism on a daily basis for me.
Mm. Give me a great test there about 1,000,001 things I want to ask. Coming back onto those points, I starting on the tools, I find that fascinating. So actually, some very basic. These are right for me. Yoga, I need the 10 minutes of that time.
I need that.
But then also this kind of what I really connected with is if you have done something wrong, something that's eating away, get it out quickly, share it. And earlier on, you said about the advice that your mum gave you over the years. I think you described as you kind of wish you took. Are any of those connected?
I think everything's connected in the circle of life. I was talking to a friend called Klaus Kongstel, and I felt that I hadn't done something right in his life when he was competing. Okay. I hadn't always been the best coach and been there for him at that time. But I went back many years, 25 years later, and I apologized. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. No. It's somewhere deep inside me. I feel like I need to get off my chest. Now, those things I got from counselling. To let some things go, to address that if the person is still around and willing to listen to you talk, and apologize to people if you feel that you haven't been the right kind of person you needed to be. I want people to treat me the same way I want to treat them. Honesty, transparency, communication is key on every level, whether you're a dance teacher training the young, or whether I'm dealing with the elderly or the suicide or the CALM. Transparency and talking and communicating.
It's incredibly powerful, this idea of actually something that you've identified with support of a counsellor that's causing you, and actually you then take an action. You've gone back, you've found the person, you had a conversation with them, and then that's, I imagine, helped both people.
Even my first husband, even my first fiance. My first fiance is now my financial advisor and my dearest friend. And my first husband would be there for me, and if anything goes wrong in my life. But I feel, and I hope that they feel, I have gone back and shared, even though I was only 16 with Nigel and I was only 18 when I married Sammy, how you break people's hearts, and maybe they're still carrying it, but I want them to know they're not the only ones carrying it.
Can you tell us more about your David? This is, of course, how you and I connected, with your incredible kind of advocacy work kind of over the years. I've seen you on TV, numerous posts supporting, incredible charities along the way. And I've always been in awe of your ability to stand, even visibly emotional in the moment, and say what is right and what people need to hear about the topic of suicide. So thank you. Wherever this next part of this conversation goes, I just want to say that. But can we start by just you telling us a bit more about David? Who was he?
David was a very, very sensitive person from a young age. For example, when my mother had to try to find where we were all going to live, she left David with another family, and I went with my mother at the time, just till she got on her feet. But he needed my mother, so she swapped us out because I was a stronger character, it appears. He needed my mother from a very, very young age. We grew up on this housing estate, and I would say he was a meek and gentle child. A gentle soul from what I get from relatives and my mum and everything. And then I think certain things went on, which is not my place to talk about, when he used to go to scouts, and different things happened in his life that I only found out years later. And that soft person, that kind soul, suddenly had to put on this exterior and be this super strong person. And I think on some parts of his life, he took the wrong track. But one of the tracks he always took was he was a protector of other people. So if things were going wrong on the housing estate, or he felt that somebody was involved in drugs or they were trying to get it, he would be the one that would be there talking to them. Or they used to call him Cola, Kola. He wore big bother boots, I remember. He was quite a stocky guy, Even I was a bit afraid of him at times. And he had that meek side growing up, and then he had to toughen up on the housing estate. He didn't take bullying well as a child. He hated to go to school dinners in the summer holidays because everybody knew that we were poor, and they would remind us, you have no dad, you're poor, you have a single mother. And he took that to heart, as where I, on the other hand, was always, oh, come on, Dave, it's okay, we're getting a hot meal. We were two completely different children, you know. And he was always quite, I don't want to say bossy. He was kind, caring, giving, and was always there for me growing up. But he certainly made me stick to my dancing. There was no way I was getting let off that lane, because he would come to see me when I was little, and he would say, I see something in you. I see, almost like he could see in the future. And if he saw me hanging out on street corners when my mother was working, I'd see him across the field, and he'd run in those bother boots, and I'd run home and lock myself in the bathroom, and he'd shout, you're going to be something one day. You're going to be something somebody we're proud of. And those words were who he was. He didn't have a jealous bone in his body. He was kind. He didn't have a lot, but what he had, he would give. And he was a great father. His daughter was 10 when he passed away. And we've taken care of her because she lost her mother to alcoholism shortly after that. So, you know, he was just that guy that you went to if you had an issue. His friend, Phil, was having issues. People were bullying him, and our David stuck up for him and would be the one that would box your ears, as they would say, if you treated people wrongly. So for me, and what I knew about him, he was always the right side of love and kindness and caring. And that's the way I remember him, as the big brother. Tough, but with that little soft heart that I knew that was there, you know.
I think it always says so much about someone's character if everybody goes to them when there's something wrong.
Well, when he died and we had the funeral, we didn't know how many people would turn up at this funeral. And my mother said, well, we'll do a little, you know, get together afterwards. We'll cater for 50. You couldn't get in the church. There was, I want to say, over 600 people, and they were all lined up outside the church. And that was very moving, you know, to see that, because I don't think he knew how many people loved him, cared about him. You know, and I know that when he was going through this difficult time, that 6 weeks, and I know that my mother tried to get him sectioned. She wanted him to go into the hospital. And as her and her friend were pulling up in the car, David saw somebody that he knew, and he didn't want to appear weak. So he made her turn the car around. And, you know, I wonder if that person hadn't been stood there, and if he would have been sectioned and had good counselling, what would have happened. And we didn't get much help at all from doctors or things. They just wanted to give him antidepressants, which afterwards, when he died, I read on the label, may accentuate the feelings of suicide. It was in small print, but nobody warned us of that. So we were all naive and green. We didn't know anything about men's mental health. I just thought he was going to get better, and he was going through a little down period. He lived in the north, I lived in the south, and my mother was the in-between person. She was staying with him, and she didn't communicate so well how serious the situation was. So, you know, I think my mother on her own part will carry guilt, and I'll carry guilt because I wasn't there at that moment to help him.
And thank you for sharing that. I'm going to say thank you a lot in this podcast. But
well, he described it as being in a very dark hole he couldn't claw his way out of. It was the darkest place, he told my mother, and she told me after. He couldn't come to terms with whatever these dark feelings were, and nobody was there to help. The doctors didn't seem to want to bother except give you a pill. And I know that my mother shared those last 6 weeks of his life with him. So yeah, difficult, very difficult.
As you've had so many years without David as I without my dad, and I find myself sometimes in these kind of like deep periods of like contemplation, not all the time, but certain moments of the year I find myself, I think back. Sometimes it's really happy thoughts, other times it's incredibly emotional, very raw emotion, pouring out crying. And I think about almost the contributing factors in my dad's lifetime that got him to a place that I believe he was slightly higher risk, and why he needed just that extra support. You mentioned in the beginning there around your dad and other factors, and multiple factors as he kind of went through his life stages. Do you ever find yourself looking back as David's journey as a guy growing up and what some of those influences were?
I don't think he always had great influences. You know, my mother was a mother who had to work every hour God sent. So we were often alone, living on a housing estate. And I think sometimes you can with the best will in the world, you hook up with sometimes the wrong type of people. And it was difficult because I left home at 14, so I didn't see those struggling years that perhaps he may have had. I talked to him most days at 5 o'clock once he had Mary and I had my son. We would talk daily, and he was always the person who said, oh, don't worry about me, or I'll be fine. But I think there were signs now when I go back. My mother said there was a couple of signs. You know, he'd written a little message, not when he died, but before that, you know, he was writing things or he was either very, very high or very, very low. There was no in between with David. As where I can get up, but I can go back on the line. I'll go below the line. I stay on the line. The majority on that line where you can cope with everything. He was either up or down. And now as we run into November and December, of course, these were the times of the year that he was really struggling in that dark, dark place that he either didn't choose to talk about or couldn't claw his way out of, or was embarrassed or didn't want people to think he was weak. Not even his daughter, because he had a great relationship with his daughter for 10 years. He brought that girl up just A-star. She's the most fabulous child ever. So I'm sure contributing factors throughout his life didn't help. And not having a male figure there didn't help. My father was just, well, not there, shall we say. So we didn't have a good male role model for him. And I think if we'd have had that, you wonder where perhaps his life may have ended up.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to large parts of what you share. And my dad was someone that everyone would go to for issues, would always be the most caring, empathetic person, but perhaps couldn't navigate that kind of sense of maybe isolation and loneliness that I felt that he may have felt during his kind of adult life. If you're able to, are you able to take us back to when you found out that David passed?
Oh, I remember it clearly. My mother had been with him for 6 weeks, and I invited them both down to London because my son was singing at St. Paul's Church. So I said, come down to London, Dave, which he often did before. And he said, no, I'm fine, but let Nan go, let my mum go. And she said, I'm not comfortable leaving him. And I said, he'll be fine for one day, Mum. He'll be fine. He's assured me he'll be fine. Not realizing he was in a lower place than possible. Anyway, she came back down to London for one day. We went to the church to see Mark sing. 12 o'clock that night, I tried to get hold of David. I couldn't get hold of him. So I got hold of his ex-girlfriend, Mary's mother. And she must have gone round to the house. And of course, was a situation that I can't even bear to think when she walked in. And the next morning at 6 o'clock, I'd let my son stay out that night for the first time with his friends because he'd been singing. And there was a knock on the door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I opened the front door, and I think I just must have face went white because I thought, you don't have police turn up at your door at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I thought something had happened to Mark, and they said, Mrs. Rich, and I moved aside and she moved forward. And they said, we hate to tell you that your son is deceased. And I think we both froze a moment in time, and it was a surreal feeling. I don't think we could, neither of us knew what to say or do. The police just stood there and stared at us. I looked at my mother. She looked white. She looked blank. So the first person I called was my ex-husband, my first husband, Sammy Stotford. He came round immediately. We got everything packed. It was a Friday, a bank holiday, I believe. And he drove us up north. Of course, we couldn't get hold of where the coroner, or couldn't get hold of anybody who knew anything. His ex-girlfriend was a mess. And it was the hardest 4 days because it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday before we could get hold of anybody. And I walked in that house, there was cigarette butts everywhere. So he'd been smoking a lot. And apparently he'd left the back door open. He'd moved his car, even though that morning he'd gone and got some milk. So it was hard to try to go back his last steps in my mind, and how he felt so low that he had to do what he did in the home he shared with my mother. Mm-hmm. So it was, I'll carry it forever and ever. People think that you heal from those things, but then you'll do a podcast like this, or we come to this time of the year, or people will say something, or I go back and I remember things that happened in his childhood that shouldn't have happened, all that got him to the point in his life where he felt so low that he couldn't reach out or talk or not even leave a letter. even for my mother,
Mm.
So I know she carries it every single day, like a heavy rucksack, even though she tries to be present. I know it's a weight on her. That's why in these years for her, with the stalking and everything else, I tried to make everything easier for her and talk about it. And she knew I was coming today, and I'll talk about it when I go home, and then we'll probably have a little sit down and it'll all come back, and then we clear it and we put it away on the shelf just for a little longer.
You mentioned that perhaps David went to get milk.
Yeah, you did.
On that day. The bit that for me I find hardest is that my dad was looking at potential holidays and trips the night before. He was very keen cyclist. Sadly didn't kind of inherit the physique and exercise ability that he had. He was so incredibly fit, and he was looking at where he could go and cycle a stretch of the Tour de France routes. You're talking, 5 hours before? 5-6 hours before.
So you wonder what goes on in that 5 hours between him going out to get his groceries or his milk in short space of time that my mother was gone. That he felt he had to do that is beyond me, and also he became paranoid. If she spoke to me on the phone, she told me as I was asking her questions, he was stood right there. So she didn't feel able to share with me what was going on, So I understand you. I mean, it takes an incredible strength. People think suicide maybe perhaps it's a weak person. I remember somebody saying that to me, how weak of him to take his own life. But, another person said to me, what kind of strength do you have to take your own life? That's not an easy thing to come in your mind and think, well, I'm going to do this today. I've got this lovely young boy or sister in my case. I'm in such a place I can't cope with life, and I feel like I'd be better off if I'm not here, for all those that surround me and for himself. So I choose to think that there was a certain strength that ran through his veins when he decided that he no longer wanted to be here,
And it's so difficult for anybody to be able to fully relate how dark and lonely it must feel to get to a point that action is the right action for that level of pain at that time. And I think I find it very difficult when people do say, the kind of cowardly act, or like, what about not thinking about all those things that he's left behind? When actually, I think he had thought about them for a long, long period of time, but actually didn't feel like he was adding to them because of how weak and poor he had his own view on himself. And so I have an opposite view in that, in fact, I also think he was incredibly determined, driven, but incredibly upset person at that time, and that's the bit that I've never been able to grasp. But I want to talk. You mentioned around it never really gets better, but these moments kind of resurface, whether that's after a podcast like this or particular times of the year. What moments do you find the hardest?
I find that moments hardest when I do a podcast like this, and I've done a few in the past, and then a friend might listen to it and then they'll go, "Oh, I know how you feel. You'll be fine." And I think that patronizing, "you'll be fine," when it's never happened to them, because unless you really have lost somebody deeply and you're grieving, no one can understand exactly how you feel and who's left behind and what kind of feelings are left behind. Because, okay, David now hopefully is resting in peace, but still we always had to pick up the pieces. And there was times when I saw my mother an absolute mess. I was angry at my brother. It wasn't always I felt, oh, poor me, I've lost my brother, or what kind of place was David in, clawing himself out of that hole. That there's another side of me too, that I was angry because he left my mother without any explanation. They had such a deep relationship, one very similar to what I have with my son. I know people have relationships with the children, but ours we were like the three musketeers. We did everything together, So I had to get over that through counselling as well. And because it's kind of selfish for me to be angry at him when he felt in such a lonely, desperate, dark, black place. But I'm left to look at my mother and pick up the pieces there. So I'm not going to lie, there was some sort of feeling of, I was angry at him. Why? Questions, why? No answers. I'll never have those answers. So in the end, it's move on, learn to cope, be there for your mother, and remember the good times and remember the person he was. Kind of, always have mixed feelings at different times of the year, particularly if a friend says something that's just so flippant. Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Move on. You're fine.
Is there anything that someone could say at that point, do you think?
No, not unless Amelia, or somebody will come and help you with some sort of thoughts. And also had a boyfriend that was constantly going to take his own life, going to take his own life, going to take his own life. So it was a constant reminder throughout the year. And I don't think that boyfriend could resonate or even think about the feelings I already had and the panic for him then. So, in the end, I just thought to myself, this is better if I just live my life on my own. I don't have another party, just my mum, myself, and a couple of close people that I have around me. But my life is still all jumbled in my head. Sometimes it seems super clear, and other days it's all jumbled and all sorts of feelings come in. Yeah. And I've been in those dark places. I can kind of imagine a little bit. I wasn't in exactly the place that he was in, but I've been down those lonely, dark roads, So...
Thank you. And I think a big part in society where somebody who hasn't been impacted by suicide, so hasn't lost a loved one to suicide, find it very difficult to get to a point whereby they can understand or try to make any sense of why somebody would then think of suicide if they've already lost someone to suicide. You mentioned some of the difficult moments you've been in your life. Have you ever got to a place where you have thought of suicide in your mind?
I have. Yeah, I've been particularly around the menopause when that was a dark place I choose to think that back then I just felt sorry for myself, like I was lonely. I was on my own. I lived in the United States. My mother lived in England. I didn't know what was happening in my life. Life seemed a mess at that point. My teaching, I write about it in my first book, Behind the Sequins. I was doing my teaching every day, and my mother used to say, hang your problem at the door and pick it up on the way out. And I remember one student, Wrangle, taking me to one side and said, you're off today, Shirley. Something's going on in your life. I don't know what it is, but you're not yourself. So I suggest we either call a day on this lesson or you give yourself 10 minutes and come back and we'll start again. That few words of that man taking me to one side changed my perception of everything. I will always be truly grateful because I couldn't see myself, and he was such a good friend and someone who cared and still cares for me this day, that said, you have to sort yourself out here. I can tell that something's not right with you in your life. And that wasn't too long after David had passed. So yeah, I've been in those places, living in a flat all on my own with no good friends, and it was my son who kind of helped me out of that dark time.
Intercepting when something wasn't
Intercepting was somebody's able to intercept and give you a good shake and say, hang on a minute here. Life's worth living and let's get you sorted out. So I always feel I can check things off with him. Some things I don't because he's a worrywart and he lives in the US and I live here with my mum. So I'm also careful what I tell him because I don't want to impact his day on a negative basis. He's got a wife, he's got a family, he's on Dancing with the Stars. His life is, running in 50,000 directions as we speak. But I always know he's there if I absolutely need him.
Almost as if you have your own, when you're getting to that point. And people around you know.
I do.
Okay.
Always got to make sure that my body's balanced with the right hormones for anybody out there who's feeling in dark places. And the best thing I can say is communicate with your doctor, reach out, don't sit alone like I did, your hair falling out and your nails falling off and your hot flashes and flushes and, your skin all dry and everything's going wrong. Is to reach out, communication. But again, to people that are the closest to you that you feel you can trust, which is my mother for me, my son.
And last week, I asked you something difficult, as whether you would be open to read a letter, essentially, to David. We've both talked very fondly of somebody called Amelia, who is the co-founder of a charity called Suicide & Co., which we both support, alongside supporting the campaign against living miserably calm. And I, about 3 years ago now, was asked to write a letter to my dad, as if he was here and he was able to read it. And I remember how peculiar of an ask it was, but also how difficult I found it to separate time to get to a headspace where I could tell him just one thing in a letter because I want to tell him everything. There's a million things I want to do. And I remember how powerful that moment was for a number of reasons. And later on, I'm going to read that letter. And as I'm preparing for this episode, I thought to myself, I wonder what you would say to David if you could write to him. And last week and over the weekend, you wrote a letter.
Do you want me to read it?
You wouldn't mind,
yes,
please.
I put something together for David. So excuse me if there's any tears here. Also a strange ask, I felt. And it was the first time I'd ever kind of put anything on paper. So, my dearest David, there isn't a day that passes when I don't think of you. Mum and I talk about you every day over dinner. We share your stories, we laugh, we cry, and we reminisce. You are my brother, my best friend, my protector, and my biggest supporter through so many of life's difficult moments. I can still see you on the housing estate watching what I was doing, looking out for me and making sure I wasn't getting myself into trouble. You're going to make something of yourself one day, Shirley, you'd say. And I still hear you saying that to this very day. You had such a beautiful soul in all you did, David, so full of light and kindness, even when you couldn't see kindness in yourself. If love alone could have kept you here, you would still be right by my side. And I truly believe that if I knew back then what I know now, I'd have you sitting here with me now, watching me judge the championships, and know you'd be hidden somewhere in the Strictly audience while I was live on national television, and you'd be so proud giving me tips. I wish I could have reached you in your darkest moments, to wrap my arms around you and to remind you how truly loved you were, by me and by all your friends. Mum and I check in on your beautiful daughter, Mary, and we make sure she's protected, just like you always used to do for me and my son and our mother. She's done you so proud. She's a healthcare scientist in the National Health Service, has a beautiful fiancé called Augustine. Mark, your beautiful nephew, Mark, he's still singing and dancing and acting and laughing, just like he used to do when you babysat him. I'm now a grandma, or a glamma, as you'd probably say. And to Banksy Wild Ballas, he looks just like you, David. Every day I see him with those big brown eyes, I think of you. I'll promise to tell him all about you when he's old enough to understand. Of course, Mum is still fighting strong, but still missing you every single day of every single week. And I'm still putting on my dancing shoes every day, doing what I love, just like you encouraged little Shirley to do. Now, until we meet again, my dear David, keep watching over me, won't you? I hope wherever you are, you find peace. I feel you with me every day, and I'll keep talking to you and about you, because somewhere, somehow, we'll meet again, and I love you so much. Oh.
Of course. I think it's thank you so much for sharing that. And not the easiest thing to ask you, but also
I've never written to him. But I think every year now, I think on his birthday, I'm going to write something to him. How his daughter's doing, how his family's doing, because maybe he's listening. I don't know. I believe it's a stronger force, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I too agree. I think there's something in this stronger force, and I had never, ever, ever been asked to do anything like that at that point, 14 years, I think it was. And I'm going to share why. I thought I've never asked anybody else to do it. But it was hard. It was a hard thing to write. It was a hard ask, but I thought maybe, again, we don't need to lock it away and not talk about it like you said you didn't for 10 years. I think it's good if we can try to keep their memories alive somehow, some way, because we had special times with them. It's nice for people to know what kind of people they were, you know. We hide it because we don't want to deal with it.
But I think now it's nice to keep the memories alive,
Absolutely. And I keep the memories alive, the human being within the number alive. And I think that was a big part for me as I started to reflect over the years as to how important writing was, is that I could get myself into a really positive space often with music, and I would go for a run, maybe it's equivalent to yoga or dancing, and I would think really intently about what I wanted to say to him, but I can never write it because I can never separate. And
because it makes it more real.
Because it makes it more real versus the thought. And what this did to me was, in a similar dynamic, just pour out emotion that I actually may follow you and try and do something similar. Maybe it is every year when he passed, or maybe Father's Day, or
maybe it's something we should encourage other people to do.
Absolutely.
Remembering the good times, remembering the things that they told us, remembering the things that they expressed, how much he loved my mum, how angry he'd get when he'd go in for a shower and he'd leave his clothes outside. My mother already had them in the washing machine.
Glamour. I love that bit. I find it funny, but at the same time, that is exactly the sorts of memories that we want to kind of instill in the future generations around that person. And, I think it's, and we do see this from the major charities and government, that numbers. And sadly, the number of people who die by suicide increases, and that's often what we hear every single year. And it feels so impossible to get the stories of every number, but I feel like we should, because it's so good for people to understand those kind of very small details that make David or my dad, Will, who they are. And that is the bit that I want my children to know about their grandfather, or your family. It sounds very similar, these kind of small details of what they would say. And this is, hand on heart. So last night, so I don't really use TikTok, but it's part of the podcast. I've been kind of engaging kind of new platforms. And for the life of me, this lady, I guess, appeared on the screen, and she was saying how grief was a peculiar thing, she mentioned in this video. And as part of it, it was a menu at a restaurant. And she said how hard it was for her not to tell her dad that her favourite dessert was on the menu. And it just hit me so hard, it still hit me now, that like my biggest fear is that happening, my children not happening me. So that video just got me so much. And I was like, that's what grief is. It's things that hit you years gone by. And, you can stand it up on TV and dance, the night away, and people probably assume that you've got it all, covered and fine, but it's not that.
It's always there, and it will never go away. I have a red button here that I have to press when I go in to do certain interviews, and that gives me a little bit more strength, and I just had another friend who took his own life just a couple of weeks ago, and two other friends that have done that. And I just look at their families and look at the devastation, and it's just if we can help through your podcast just in any way at all to help people who are struggling. I think that's why I keep going with this charity work like yourself.
Absolutely. And I am going to read the letter to my dad, because it is, I never read it out loud properly, but at the same time has that level of humour, which I think will leave on a positive note if it's emotional at times. But so my letter to my dad went like this. Dad, I love you so much. I can't even read it now, can I? Dad, I have so much to say. Wow, I can't even read it.
Easy.
Dad, I have so much that I want to say to you. I'll start with the easy one. I never actually became the next Alan Shearer, like was our plan, although I still pretend most days, normally in the mirror. And there still sits somewhere inside of me the belief that I can still be him. Anyway, the difficult part. Over the last 15 years, I found so many ways to try and cope with the fact that you're not here. For the first 10 years, I pretended that it didn't happen at all. I never said your name. I never talked about our family. I blocked out every thought possible. I certainly never spoke about how you died. During that time, I would often be reminded how much I look like you. Some people would actually call me your name, Will, and then they would realise. I couldn't cope with what happened. I couldn't cope that you felt so much pain, that you felt this was your only option to end that pain. I feel sick even today, seeing objects that remind me of you and your death. I don't think anyone has touched my neck for the last 15 years. I still find the concept of suicide and what happened impossible to grasp. Over the last 5 years, I stumbled across others who shared similar pain and unanswered questions to me. This gave me a strange sense of hope. Since then, I've channeled everything that I wish I could change 15 years ago into other people and prevent others feeling the way that you did. I'll keep your legacy going every day, just like this. So now I talk about you every day to everyone. I talk about suicide for what it is. I talk about you, your life, how you must have felt at that time. People learn about you every day, and you help so many people, and I hope you're proud of this. I hope that soon your legacy will live on through new generations of our family. I'll keep you updated on that one. So close. For most of my life, I felt as if this was the only way to try and fill your void. Dad, what I want to say is that it's okay to feel pain, to be upset because of the pain, because of that pain is okay too. I promise. I wish you only knew what I knew now. So I did read it this morning, still thinking I wouldn't do that. And the point why I wanted to do that and put myself through that was the bit towards the end. And I believe in this external force that exists around us, and good things can happen after that. Then I wasn't a father. And I started to do some calculations, maybe a year later, when I remembered about this campaign. And I wrote about this on the day that my dad passed. And 9 months, pretty much from my calculations, and my daughter was born on her due date, was pretty much the day that I wrote it.
Wow.
And I've never realised this. Says to my partner, like, insert a million swear words. What? And the first time I've ever explained out that I want future generations to live on for you. And I was something there, like doing that. And I don't know if I'm spiritual, but I think I was after this. And where you see 15 years, obviously it's 18 years now. But and I started doing calculations. What it was right in that week. Well,
it's bizarre, isn't it?
But to bring us back into a bit of process is that it's those stories. And I think stories are what can save people. And I think intercepting people is what can save people. And, we're very grateful for the work of CALM and why I wanted to kind of dedicate this phase and this process of talking about suicide to them. Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to talk about it in the way that I was. And I think if we can find spaces to hear stories and hear reflections, not just of people that have gone, but also people who have thought about suicide and are here, to appear on TV frequently, to run businesses, to have families, to whatever they're doing in their life, it's possible to have the thought and still be here.
And I think if people, through podcasts like this, and people who reach out and people who are willing to talk, and sometimes my inbox gets full of messages of hope, and that's all I ask, really. I just hate the thought of people suffering, I live with it on a daily basis with my mum, and it's difficult.
Your son played a really important role in your advocacy work.
He did. When I was 50 years old, and he wanted me to have a party, which I did at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. And he said, now what we'll do is we'll have everybody give a nice, generous gift, and then we'll start off your campaign so that we can keep David's memory alive. And I think we collected in excess of $60,000 at the time, just for gifts. So no gifts for my 50th, which was fine. But that's what started me on the roll. 50. Now, don't forget, I didn't get the job till I was 57 here. So I'd already on that road of campaigning and talking to people and starting to talk more about David, even though my mother found it still extremely difficult. I mean, I dare say my mum won't listen to any podcasts that I do because it's just too painful for her. It's just the generation thing. And I've enjoyed the work ever since. I love Suicide & Co. for the families and people who are left behind. CALM, as you know, I've done many tasks and things trying to raise money for them and go out of my way to just, if it's one person, if it's 10,000 people, if it's a word of encouragement, if it's, I can relate, any moment that somebody else gets from these podcasts helps with a little bit my suffering.
Totally.
That doesn't sound selfish, but...
I think I've said pretty much the same sentence in the past. I don't want it to appear selfish, but it does. It has a double effect. It feels like it's reciprocal even. And because I think a lot of people will listen to this podcast because it's two people who have lost somebody incredibly important in their life talk about it, and we are lucky and unlucky in the sense that we have had long periods of time without that person, so it perhaps gives us a tiny bit more strength to do stuff like we've just done then. But often what we see, and what I see quite often, is that people want to do something. And I mean this in a very good way to anyone listening, is that it almost, I see it very quickly after. like it took me over a decade. It's not something that you've just been able to do quickly.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to tell somebody that, because all you want to do is do something in memory. I haven't prepared you for this question, but what sort of thing, what would you say to somebody if they're listening to this now that had lost somebody, like we have, but will be watching you every other single day, wanted to do something? What could they do?
Well, first of all, don't suffer in silence, which is what my mother and I did for a long, long time. And definitely you did as well. Don't suffer in silence. You can reach out. You can talk to somebody. You can get involved if you like, keeping your loved one's memory alive. You can join CALM, help us, to get the word out. Let's see if we can make lights brighter for people whose light has dimmed. I think these podcasts are great. And this is where social media comes into it, because social media can be such a daunting place, but it can also be a place of sharing, and other people talking about things. If they don't comfortable face to face with you, they don't need to show their face, but they can share their feelings, which is what happens on my inbox. And I think it's the power of the media now. I think more people need to keep talking about it. It's still difficult for me, but like you say, it's been many years. Some people have lost loved ones recently. It becomes difficult to talk about. But reach out to CALM, Suicide & Co. for those that are left behind. Chat to somebody, reach out in the inboxes, see how we can help. Because life is worth living, I think. And we're only here for such a short space of time, which is, I'd love to have said that to David. That the lights dim really, really quickly. And yeah.
So we have a set of recurring questions. You can answer these however you wish. People sometimes more serious or lighthearted, longer, shorter, entirely up to you. So what's one societal rule you'd completely erase or rewrite if you could?
On societal rule, I'd probably get rid of all social media, but that's just me. I'd like to, families live again, and mobile phones and all this digital stuff that we're going into, where I see destroyed families, or I go to the airport and they're all on self and nobody's communicating. And when they do communicate, they put their frustrations out in this media world. I'm really nervous about the future. I'm not nervous about the future for me, because I don't think some things will be in my lifetime, like robots and this and that and the other. But I'm nervous for the next generation, my grandson, his children. So I would like capped something from the government on the social media. And some schools are banning phones now, and I'm like, yay.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had the Children's Commissioner on recently. We're talking just about that and how important that is. Probably one of the most important things I think we can look to control.
It's just such a
because you've experienced yourself awful online abuse, and how do you even begin to manage that yourself?
Well, you do, don't you? You don't have a choice. You have a choice. Don't read it, right, which everyone tells you not to do. What's the first thing you're going to do is read it. And then it's those coping mechanisms of realizing that that's other person's problem. And when they're dishing out criticism to you, would they do that to their loved ones? People talk about you with such hate and vitriol, like they know you because they see you on national television. But I've news, you do not know me. You do not know the person, except for the person who occupies the seat to do a job about critiquing dancing. But as a human being, you don't know me at all. What's
something you've never or rarely said publicly, but perhaps we're ready to now?
Well, I've never, ever read a letter to my brother. I never put things down on paper. I don't overly share those darkest, lonely moments of my own life. So I think each time I do one of these podcasts, I feel myself just getting a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger because of what I get back from the people that I'm helping. So
totally. And I think today's been an embodiment of all of that. And and I'm sure will encourage many other people to reflect on their loved ones, and perhaps in a similar way that you did today. So thank you. And you touched on this point, but as we consider the world we're going into, or perhaps we're in, if we record this again in 2035 on a similar topic, what do you hope we are talking about? Or perhaps what do you worry we could be talking about?
I worry that we'll be robots. I worry that, I went to a hotel, ordered a breakfast, and a little robot came up with it on a tray. And everywhere you go now, everything seems to be the scan code. I mean, my poor mum, everything's digital, going online. She's used to going to the post office and paying her bills, and everything as we know it seems to be leaving. I think I got the best eras in life when it came to humanity, when we were able to talk to each other. And It's that I'm really scared of the digital era. I'm scared that everything, you go through the airport now, they scan my eye. I don't even need my passport. I just put my eye there and I can go straight through into the United States. Everything's just, it's a changing world. Some things are going to be good, I'm sure. I think one day the cars will fly. I don't think the cars will be on a road. I think news reporters will be AI, digitally enhanced people who get the news, and then they won't be employing. So what about the employment? How will people earn a living? You know, all those types of things. I don't overly worry about them because I don't think they'll be in my lifetime, but I worry about them for the next, your children, your daughter, my grandson, you know. I just wonder sometimes if we're being too clever for our, you know.
What's the knock-on, a side effect of all this very clever?
Well, it's affecting families already, isn't it?
Yeah.
All this social media and phones and the next high-tech phone, and people don't go to a concert anymore. They just hold the phone up. They don't enjoy the experience in the moment like we're enjoying in the moment, blocked away from the rest of the world. Yeah. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow is promised to nobody, and you and I only have this moment right now because it could change by tomorrow.
Absolutely. And you're so spot on around the job market too, about a number of people who are going to be impacted, but also younger people thinking about
I'm already seeing it in the TV industry.
Okay.
On one channel, they told me they were getting rid of half the staff and it was moving to much smaller. Everything seems much smaller, even going less cameras and less cameramen. And I worry for those people as well.
Yeah.
Their
people
jobs.
that have kept it. Made the industry or multiple industries what they are. And I think there's, it's something that I'm finding quite very difficult because I know from my work that some of the risk factors of suicide, if we be really, really blunt about it, is actually, not feeling a sense of purpose, job insecurity, redundancy, financial pressures are all significant warning signs and risk factors. And it almost seems to be happening en masse, but I'm not seeing enough conversations on that from
At
everyone.
all.
And you're
thinking, think people are embarrassed to talk about it.
Yeah.
They have to fire all these people, fire those people. They've got without jobs, Yeah. I don't know.
People have rent, mortgages, childcare, whatever else to fund.
Everything's going up, nothing's going down, and people are getting unemployed left, right, and centre. Yeah. Even people I know that have built up friendships, always worrying about where their next job's going to come from.
Which is why the work of the charities is even more crucial, I think.
Invaluable.
Totally. So on that note, just a huge, huge, huge thank you for all the time and care that you've spent, to get to here today and conduct yourself in the manner that you have done. It's just, I'm completely in awe of you. And I think I have been anyway, but even more so now. So,
can I just say to you though, I'm looking at your dad's picture there when you were a young boy, and I know that he will be so proud of you for doing this. He will be somewhere in that higher force, and maybe you didn't end up being what he thought you were going to be, but you ended up now, you'll be helping so many more people. So your dad would be ultra proud of you.
Thank you so much. That was an incredible conversation, one that will definitely stick with me. There was something about the way Shirley spoke, not just what she said, but how she said it and how she conducted herself, the kind of strength and raw honesty that only really comes from having lived through real pain. What struck me most was how her story keeps circling back to courage. Courage as a child, walking miles alone to dance classes. Courage as a woman, rebuilding her life after years of being stalked. And courage in grief, choosing to keep her brother's memory alive, even when the memory still hurts. Her relationship with her mum was another moment that stayed with me. You can feel that bond, that mix of humour, love, and tough lessons that's kept Shirley grounded through every single storm. And then there was the letter. Hearing her read to David with such tenderness and pride reminded me just how important love is and how love doesn't fade just because someone's gone. It changes its form, yes. It finds new ways to speak. If I took anything from Shirley, it's that healing isn't about moving on. It's about finding ways to keep the love alive, to talk about the people we've lost, and to make sure that their stories will matter, always, because they always will. If this episode affected you, support is available. You can find a link to various different resources in the notes below. Thank you so much for listening, and please do take care of yourself and those around you. Thank you.